Good evening, everybody. Today is Thursday, October 27th. It is 6:30 p.m. This is the Olentangy Board of Education. It's a regular meeting, so I will call the meeting to order. Mr. Jenkins, please call the roll.
Dr. Dabrico.
Present.
Mr. Lester.
Present.
Mr. O'Brien.
Here.
Dr. Wallach.
Here.
Dr. Wise.
Here.
All right, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, let's just...
What do you pray?
I'm not pledging allegiance to your lapel.
I pledge allegiance.
To the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written. Do we have any amendments to the agenda?
No, sir.
No. All right, seeing none, could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Can I have a second, please?
Second. Any
Any discussion on the agenda? All right, seeing none, please call the roll, Mr. Jenkins.
Sorry about that. Thought I heard silenced. Dr. Wallach.
Yeah, yes.
Dr. Wise.
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Dr. Dabrico.
Yes.
Mr. Lester.
Yes.
All right, we'll go to our first presentation item. We have two presentation items tonight. The first being the Student Academic Achievement Awards, and the National Merit Semifinalists and Commended Students. So I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Wise.
Tonight, we salute Olentangy students who are outstanding scholars and have achieved recognition in the 2023 National Merit Scholarship Program. A total of 78 students from Olentangy's 4 high schools earned a commended or semifinalist status as a result of their performance on the 2022 preliminary SAT or National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. 48 Olentangy students have qualified as commended scholars for the 2023 National Merit Scholarship Program. Most of them are here this evening. These students are among approximately 1.6 million high school students across the country who entered the program by taking the preliminary SAT or National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. These students placed among the top 50,000 highest scorers. Although commended students do not continue in the competition for National Merit Scholarships, many of these students become candidates for special scholarships sponsored by corporations and businesses. Congratulations to our commended students. As your name is called, please proceed across the stage to have your picture taken with Superintendent Mark Rafe and Board President Kevin O'Brien. From Olentangy Berlin High School, Maud Adriz. Dharani Kanaka Sabi. Jing U Wuong. From Olentangy High School, Miles Carson. Gavin Dahl. Arjun Eskar Rajmalan. Karan Gopal. Molly Hertzel. Adiyat Krishna. Galen Morse. Pranav Nandukumar. Neha Tulele. From Olentangy Liberty High School, Annika Albrecht. Abhinav Boda. Callum Codwell. Jordan Chu. Pruni Devareddy. Catherine Farrell. Rena Hahn. Madison Harper. Abiram Kaudium. Sophia Markley. Sadie Mittendorf. Akshaya Mukala. Adharva Suwant. Ian Stanton. Shreya Arun Kumar. Luke Border. Amy Hansen. Neil Harith. Tony Ivanov. Kanish Kovaru. George Liu. Laura Felderin. Sareva Paul. Ahintia Peramal. Shandini Saliki. Luke Woolard. In addition, 30 Olentangy students have qualified as semifinalists. These academically talented high school seniors have an opportunity to continue in the competition from some 7,500 National Merit Scholarships worth nearly $30 million that will be offered next spring. Those Olentangy students named 2023 National Merit Scholarship semifinalists here with us tonight are, from Olentangy Berlin High School, Haley Aki. Sharishma Bukhareddy. Joshua McKnight. From Olentangy High School, Kirathiga Ba-Umar Ujan. Elliot Barden. Vedant Dave. Shri Gaduvarthi. Colin Graham. Cassidy He. Suthik Kambam. Venkata Satyusa Ket Ko Laru. Nidya Kandugari. Courtney Kosick. Atmaj Rugish. Keshav Shriram. Karan Tendra. Dylan Weber. From Olentangy Liberty High School, Jonah Brinkman. David Cruz. Dimitri Hatch. Holden Vilas Inco. Jacob Witt. Dylan Zhao. Adrian Zong. From Olentangy Orange High School, Andrew Behrens. Elijah Beal. Eli Gleckler. Rayanne Hedrick. Claire Kaufman. Jerry Wong. Congratulations to these outstanding students, their families, and teachers. Thank you.
Well done.
While we're transitioning to our next presentation item, everyone is welcome to stay, but we also understand if you want to enjoy the rest of your evening somewhere other than here. So thank you very much for coming.
If anywhere
Larry, anything?
better to be. No, you have to stay. Thank you.
Sitting down there.
Thank you.
I'll call him up. right, so now to go to our second presentation item. So item B, the pupil services update. So I'd like to call Marty Argenbright, Stephanie Dabercow, Malika Jefferson, and Jacqueline Roscoe. And again, for those that did choose to stay, you're welcome to come down to the front if you want, or you can obviously stay where you are. So with that, Marty, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. First of all, I would like to introduce the three of the assistant directors in our department, Malika Jefferson and Stephanie Dabercow. Malika works with our secondary buildings. Stephanie works with our elementary buildings. And Jacqueline Roscoe works with our preschool programs. And they will also be presenting tonight. First, on our agenda, we'll talk a little bit about our special education or related services. We'll also review our special education rating and some gap closing data to share with you. We'll update you on the House Bill 436 dyslexia law, and we'll give you some information on our English learners and our preschool programs. A little bit about our special education program, where we identify and deliver services to all of our students with disabilities. We have a total of 236 intervention specialists that work with our 3,332 students with disabilities. Out of those 3,322 students with disabilities, we have the following categories that are listed, which would include specific learning disabilities, other health impaired, and autism, among several others that are also listed. Also in our department, we support students with 504 plans. There are currently 1,316 students in the district with 504 plans that we support in pupil services. Also in our department, we have related services and other staff that we want to share with you. Related services staff, we have a total of 107, which would include our OTs, PTs, our speech language pathologists, school psychologists, vision specialists, APE teachers, behavior specialists, transition coordinators, and we also have 2 parent mentors in the district that support our staff and parents through pre-K and 12, grades 12. So if you include all of our students with disabilities, students with 504s, and our English learners, and from pre-K through 12, we have a total, that's 22.6% of the students throughout the district that pupil services help support. That's a lot of students. We have a lot of staff, and we have a lot of great people that provide a lot of good services, great services for the students in our district. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Malika.
Good evening. This next slide is about our special education rating that just was released for our 2022 data. Overall, we met all of the indicators for the 7 compliance indicators that are looked at for this rating. That includes secondary transition, timely and accurate data, as well as initial evaluations being completed on time. We're very proud of the work that our staff are doing, coupling with the support that we get from our parents in the district. So that's our data for there. And then our performance data, we are very proud about our gap closing. And when we think about our gap closing, we are servicing approximately about 400 2E students, all the way to our students with intellectual disabilities. This gap closing data does go over our ELA grades, where we have closed the gap with 21% of our students and exceeded the performance in math for 21.3% of our students. So we're really, really proud about some of the work that has happened with the students that we have in the district. And I'll turn this over to Stephanie.
All right, good evening. Thanks for having us. I'm going to talk about the dyslexia law and then move into the English learner program. So I'm guessing you're probably already familiar with House Bill 436, the dyslexia law. We've been talking about it for a couple of years now, been planning, strategically planning for a couple of years. We're very proud to say that we're definitely ahead of this, right? You might already be aware that we were the first public school district in the nation to be accredited by the Orton-Gillingham Academy. So we already have a framework in place, structures in place for staff training and professional development prior to the law. So I think the requirement for the law for the 22-23 school year was to do just that, to kind of create a framework for structured literacy training, and we've already done that and have been doing that for several years now. So there's some stats here on the screen just about the number of staff who have already met the requirements, again, for the law that just started. We have a great team, a great support team. Holly Roberts is our district dyslexia specialist. Should be noted that she leads a team of support staff who provide training to teachers, and part of that training is to observe teachers, to do a supervised practicum, is what we call it, to really give them feedback, watch their lessons, and give them critical feedback to improve their practice. So there's stats here again just to talk about the training opportunities that are currently happening. For the current school year, and then in the future we will continue to grow the program and to provide additional training as we move forward. For our intervention specialists specifically, they are really going above and beyond. They're not doing the basic, or I guess the minimum requirement that's outlined in the House bill, which is 18 hours of PD. They're going well above and beyond that to really be specialists and have specialized training to work with our students who really need that Tier 3 specially designed instruction. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears and move to our English Learner program. This program is growing quickly. We talk about growth all of the time in the district, right? But this is a subset that is quickly growing. In fact, when we put this slide together, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks ago, you see the number 1272 students. When I checked today, it was 1281. That just kind of shows you the pace that we see in terms of the increase. We've added many teachers over the last several years. I'd like to thank Todd Meyer and Dr. Fetty for their support in helping us strategically plan for our staffing forecast with this program. And also just wanted to point out the demographics, the number of different languages. We've got the stat here of 58 different languages that are represented just with the English learner students and their families. But it's important to note at the bottom of the slide there, across the district as a whole, we have 81 different languages, and at this point, 20% of our families across the district are multilingual. That doesn't mean that all of those students are English learners or need English learner support services. Those are the students who are still learning English. But that data at the bottom of the screen really captures kind of our current demographics of just our multilingual community, which is really cool. And then you can see, I think that's the top 10 languages there in the chart on the right. And then we have a similar slide here that, similar to the data that Malika talked about with our IEP learners, we also have similar data for gap closing for English learners as a subgroup, as you can see, exceeding performance, exceeding growth goals, exceeding state goals. That's the theme. So we're very proud of that. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Jacqueline.
Thank you. As Marty shared, my name is Jacqueline Roscoe. I am one of the 3 assistant directors, and I oversee our preschool program. Just a couple highlights of our preschool program. We are in 7 different locations, 5 of which are in our elementary schools, our former central office of Shanahan Preschool, and 1 classroom at the Career Center, which is their early childhood lab classroom, which has been a great opportunity that we opened up 4 years ago this year. Just some of the highlights, as you're used to, is the growth. We grew just last year to this year 152 students. within the program of 1 year. We also piloted a new type of classroom. I have on the left here a list of the types, like the continuum of classrooms that we provide support to in our students. Similar to school age, we have specialized learning centers. Our foundations program is a program where we work on those foundational skills of our young learners, typically our age 3, maybe through 5-year-old in that program, and there are no peer models in that program. We then, based off parent feedback and staff feedback, we launched a pilot last year called our Transitions SLC, which just introduces our special needs students to just a small subset of peer models and really has some focused adult support in there. And you can see kind of just the growth and kind of predictability of the forecasting. I know Mr. Jenkins will be talking about the accuracy of the forecasting with the agency we use. Potentially I need to use them too. It's very tricky to try to determine where the IEP students, how many we're going to get at the age of 3, as well as just what type of programming best fits their needs. So we're continuing to analyze that month to month to make best projections for each year. And then our extended day SLC is our third one, and then our most common, or what most people think of preschool in our integrated classroom, is that 50% model of 50% of students with IEPs and 50% peer models. So we do have the largest number of sections with that in our half-day program that runs Tuesday through Friday for 2 hours and 40 minutes. As Marty said at the very beginning, we do have some excellent staff. We have 30 full-time teachers in our preschool program and 7 part-time, and that's amongst numerous preschool assistants, many of which are overqualified for the job beyond the minimum state requirements, many of them former educators or teachers themselves that are very passionate and empathetic with our students. This year we have 337, it's probably already outdated data just from last week, because we are legally required to provide special ed services to any student at the age of 3. So that is the start of their IEP if they do in fact qualify. We have 267 peer models, again, not the same number as some of our programs do not have peer models. So for a total of 604 students in our program, again, across 7 locations. So being a former elementary principal in the district, very similar size to an elementary, but spread out. So very excited for the amazing work that our staff is doing. Been challenging with COVID, and our enrollments kind of ebbed and flowed based on staff or parents' comfortability, but we're excited to have the new wings that the district put in place about 4 years ago in some of our elementary schools, as well as our newest location for preschool last year at Shale Meadows. So that's just a highlight of some of the amazing things we're doing in preschool. And on behalf of the team, are there any questions for our team about tonight's special education update?
I have one.
Brandon, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So first of all, thank you all so much. It's a great presentation. Thank you all for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
You know, one of our foundational goals in our strategic plan and just motivating the district is inclusivity, and these efforts are critical to that. You have to provide that level of support, you know, to make sure the students are feeling like they have a place here, and that's key. And I've heard from so many parents that they came to this district specifically because of these services. So it's great, and I want to commend you, and that doesn't happen by accident, right? I mean, that takes a lot of hard work. The one area where I've heard of difficulty is, you know, especially in the transitions from one school to the next, and parents as they're trying to figure out the new landscape. So as you talked about the parent mentors, can you describe a little bit about how that process works and what sort of support parents can look forward to as they're transitioning maybe from one school to the next and really trying to make sure that their students get what they need?
Very timely for me. This is something I actually worked on today. So obviously I support kindergarten, preschool to kindergarten transition. Some of the supports that we put in place is already at our fall parent-teacher conferences. Our teachers have front-loaded the parents on whether their child is required to go to kindergarten or eligible, because that is sometimes a parent decision. We have an upcoming meeting for our preschool families on December 6th, where we will host a meeting especially for those that are eligible, that have some decision-making, but also required to talk about the process. It seems early to make the decision, but in preschool alone, they make the decision by winter break because there is such a team of therapists, school psychologists, our intervention specialists, and the parent included in that team to make a smooth transition. So we start having a planning meeting specific for our transitions for preschool to kindergarten. Many of them have to be reevaluated with that 3-year timeline that the state gives. They're coming out of preschool and they're typically hitting that 3-year timeline to transition. So parents are a part of that planning meeting from the special education services, and then we start to tie the preschool into the elementary by having that receiving homeschool building principal, assistant principal, and or receiving teachers to sit in on those meetings, to have those conversations about what does a preschool day look like versus that kindergarten school day. That's just some examples. Another, you mentioned the parent mentor. I actually was just at Indian Springs Preschool today with our parent mentor and one of our families. It was not about transition, but during an IEP meeting, when I sat in as the district representative, you could just tell that the parent was very surprised by the success her child was having in the classroom, and she was feeling some frustrations in her home. And it was evident throughout the meeting that she was pleasantly surprised by the data, but also wondering how can she have that same success. So we set up an observation in the preschool classroom. She again was very pleasantly surprised by seeing her son have such positive interactions with his peers. Of course, did need some redirection at time, but very, very fitting in the classroom. And so then today was a follow-up meeting with myself, the parent mentor, and that parent to really just have some mom conversations, honestly, just giving us grace as parents, what developmental expectations that she should or should not maybe even have as her child is a 5-year-old. So those are some amazing supports. Our parent mentors will also be at our transition meetings, and I know that's true for the older grades as well. So I don't know, Stephanie, if you want to add on to that at all, or Malika.
Just a real quick add, we have similar structures in place for 5th to 6th and 8th to 9th transition. Our parent mentors are heavily involved. We also heavily involve our what we call department chairs, which are intervention specialists, teacher leaders in their buildings. So we have, in fact, we're almost ready to run a report for next year, right? Like that's kind of the Olentangy way. We're turning the corner on November. We start looking at our projection data, how much staff do we need in each building, starting kind of on the back end that the parent doesn't really see. But then in the spring, definitely at IEP meetings, encouraging collaboration, encouraging participation from the next building to participate on the team.
And for our students that are exiting from school-age services, we also have transition coordinators. They help families, along with the parent mentors, to look at different opportunities from college to day habs to different opportunities that are available, work for students that are exiting high school as well.
Any other questions for the team?
Go ahead.
Yes. Keeping with my tradition, I have 2 questions. First one is kind of just following up with Mr. Lester. We find ourselves in the same meetings with many of the same folks. One parent in the spring really stood out, and she shared with, I'm pretty sure it was at open office hours, if I'm remembering right, Mr. Lester. This is not an easy thing to do with a parent, as a parent tries to support their student and advocate to make sure the student's included in everything that student wants to be included in. You kind of talked about the transitions. What else do we do to support students so every single barrier is torn down and those students have the full Olentangy experience?
I can think of a couple really just as being a former elementary principal. We had running club and we had numerous students who maybe had some behavioral challenges, maybe some physical challenges. And so we worked together with, actually Stephanie was my people services supervisor at that time. And we worked together and provided some aid support to allow that child to have full inclusivity into that club, which was after school. Wonderful conversation with, a lot of times the staff are volunteering their time and just the partnership coming together. I know some of my preschool additional aid support that we have, they support high schoolers during marching band practice so they can have full inclusivity as well. When Mr. Lester was talking about that, that was actually the theme of our PD Day #1 with preschool, and we had our therapists there and just layering on the obstacles that students face. Like I'm standing in front of you and I have maybe some nerves, but not a ton of distractions and hearing the buzzing in the background and the lights behind me, and just how do you take those away and putting yourself in the shoes of the child. And I think for any parent who has a child with a disability, it's important that we feel their lens as well. When they go into, like I volunteer for my church and they bring their child and they're like, I didn't know there was a barbecue, and my child has this allergy, or my child has this texture concern. We need to do the best that we can to front load them, to lay out expectations, and honestly just accommodate so that child has the same experience. So those are just a few, but again, not sure if any of my counterparts want to add on.
Just a quick add, just starting with relationships, right, with the family, really listening to their goals for their child, and trying to fill in any gaps or bridge, work our way to that goal. Maybe it's not something that's happening tomorrow, but a long-term goal. Malika talked about even post-secondary transition, right? That's hard to think about when you're in preschool, but those are the steps that we think about along the way to help support the goal of the child and the family.
I think that we're also very proud of our gen ed students that are working with our students with disabilities. We do have APE programs, we have Special Olympics, and we have a lot of students in the district that will come out and help, support, work with them with different sports and activities like that as well, outside of the school day. So it's very inclusive here.
Thank you. So second question, this is kind of weird how I'm sitting, sorry. But it's easier to see. So second question is, we're working really hard to understand mental health in our district. And our students with special needs have different mental health needs, some are the same, some more, right? So how do we, is there something we're doing to make sure we're aware of this and we're sensitive to it and we're most importantly meeting and exceeding those needs so they can learn?
Yeah.
My first thought, I think you're already familiar with our student well-being team and department, and we definitely are collaborating, right? So students on IEPs who also have those needs, we're pulling in the staff, counselors, right? School counselors, social workers, mental health specialists. They're kind of in that student well-being division, but pulling them in as consultants, as IEP team members, as support for parents. So anybody want to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add, it's a little bit different, Dr. Dabriko, but ultimately the district has always been really strong with response to intervention, which is more the academic side, and the tiered support that you heard Stephanie reference in our department is naturally in that tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, because that's what special education is. But the district is making great strides with the PBIS side, the positive behavior intervention supports, which has that umbrella of MTSS, and that falls very much under the well-being in relationship to positive reinforcements for students. And I think coming out of COVID, if you will, ultimately our staff has seen an increased need to support students, and not just going to that tier 3 of those mental health providers, but how do we strengthen our tier 1, that core group of students. And so really proud of the work the district PBIS team is doing in conjunction with the curriculum department, and embedding that really in our day-to-day PD, and every building in the district now has a PBIS team, and I think that's going to really strengthen our tier 1 as well.
Thank you for what you do. It's cool to have parents come and say, we moved to Olentangy because of what's available in your district for my child, so thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for our team?
I just have a comment. I'm one of those parents that moved to the district before services because I have 2 dyslexic kids. So I'm very appreciative of the services for dyslexia that our district has. I know Monday the dyslexia simulation occurred, and I helped run a station with that, and so it was great to participate in that, and we also had teachers, some of our own teachers that were there. So it's a great, I can't stress it enough, just the service that we have, and I know, especially with the dyslexia, how helpful it has been for my family as well as other families. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you for the positive feedback. Have a great evening.
All right, thank you very much. Great job. Excuse me. The next agenda item is the board president's report. We're a little out of order than usual. But I have one brief comment, and then I'll open it up to the group. Anyone has any updates? We're 12 days away from an election, and elections matter. Elections are important. So I'm just advocating that people get out and vote and have your voice be heard, understand the issues, understand your candidates, and make sure you participate in the election process. So, anyone else have any comments?
Second that.
There you go.
Mr. O'Brien, 13 months ago, Rick Carfagna had a fair funding kind of information session at Orange Library. He talked about the current state of fair funding in Cup-Patterson. And he left us all with the notion that, and he said these words pretty much verbatim, you need to hold us accountable. And that's what I would ask our community to do, is talk to their candidates, talk to their existing legislators. Where do they stand on fair funding? Our district gets pennies on the dollar for what you send to Columbus in taxes that gets back to our school district. And we'll talk a little bit about that, I think, in a couple minutes. This summer, I believe right at this very podium, the Speaker of the Ohio House said, the way to make a difference for fair funding is so that we need to hear from folks in your district. So I just encourage people to call your legislators, email them. If you need their numbers, please just text me and I'd be glad to send them to you. An honest, heartfelt call from someone in our district makes a big difference. So I appreciate you bringing it up. Please make sure you vote 2 weeks from last Tuesday.
12 days. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, with that, we will turn it over to Mr. Ray for the superintendent's report.
All righty. Whoa, geez. Wish People Services team had stayed, because I hate to waste saying nice things and then I actually hear this, but you know, it is certainly something that's I'm very proud of as the fourth largest district in the state. You know, when you're really large, it's easy. Sometimes it's difficult to make such a large district feel small, and the services we provide through our Pupil Services team, I think, is an example of how we do that and stay and try. It's not perfect. It's always messy. People are passionate about their children, obviously, regardless of whether or not they have a disability or not. And oftentimes with those students that we have, as you saw, that long list of disabilities that that we serve, and the number of people we have serving them, that, you know, it's 15% of our population. And we want them to have every bit as, you know, because we have a legal obligation to provide a free and appropriate public education in their least restrictive environment, and working really hard to do that. So I am really, really proud of the work Marty has done with his team, and the assistant directors all do a great job, and all of our pupil services supervisors across, and all of our staff in pupil services, working every day to meet the needs of all of our students. So I also want to welcome Mr. LaFlamme. I think it's Mr. LaFlamme's AP Gov class? Yes. These guys, hey, are you chewing it? Obviously the A students are down here. I don't know about all the rest stuck in the back, but these guys in the, you know, they showed out right here front. Nice, I like it. So welcome and thank you. So just want to start off by congratulating our new principal at Orange High School. Monica Asher was named the Ohio Principal of the Year by the OASSA, and she will be recognized at the Ohio School Boards Association conference in November. I also did want to mention that, you know, the Pupil Services team did a great job, because they are the kings of alphabet soup. Literally every you know, acronym out there is in our Pupil Service. I think I only counted one MTSS that they didn't define. It's a multi-tiered system of support. My guys are always checking me to see if I know what we do. Our Parent Academy program was held a week ago at Berlin High School. We did a great turnout. Over 200 parents and staff were in attendance, and a lot of students. Our high school journalism kids did a press conference with the panelists before, so it was a great kickoff to our Bridge Ed program, and I'm really looking forward to that, giving some excellent opportunities for our students and staff here in the future. Bowling Green University's Men's Glee Club came to Berlin High School. It was a great day. All of our middle and high school male singers, grade 7 to 12, participated. So you see a picture there of a whole bunch of male students who are in our choir programs. And as a former Keynote's dad who had a son in that program, I'm really proud of the work that they do. If you're not aware, Diwali is currently happening here, and I'm sorry. Yep, wrong. Right slide, wrong note. And I just want to, we had a lot of activities happening all throughout the district celebrating the holiday. And here's a picture of some Berkshire Middle School students that they did performance of their cultural dances, and but we had many schools throughout the district educating our students on Diwali. Oak Creek Elementary School, their students took their Take Care Club, took an opportunity to visiting a nursing home last week and to make pumpkins and Halloween crafts. We had some really great pictures of some people in wearing spider hats. I'm a little disappointed we didn't get the spider hat picture in there that I asked for, but I'm thankful for those students. And again, the number of activities we have going on all throughout our district, which is another, I think, just another example of how we continue to try to make things feel small here for our big district. It's just really special that our kids take the time to reach out. I got notified by a proud resident here, Mary Rob Clodfelter, who's a longtime district resident, took the time to inform us about Olentangy High School 1994 alumni Jim Reardon, who was just recently named the Fire Chief of Liberty Township. So congratulations to Chief Reardon. Look forward to meeting him here in the future, and we get excuse me, great service from Liberty Township Fire. If I want to continue to educate the community on the fact that we are involved in a redistricting process. Our committee has done the work that it has been charged to do and developed some potential plans. So I encourage all community members to pay attention to what's happening with redistricting. We have 2 community forums, and they're going to come and present information on Monday, November 7th, and Wednesday at Berlin High School, and Wednesday, November 9th at Olentangy High School. Again, I've said this from the start of the process. The redistricting is for middle and elementary schools. We're going to try to balance out some enrollment. All of our middle schools are potentially affected. The plans are developed. We're going to take feedback, potentially modify plans if necessary based on the feedback we're given from our community, and then I'll make a final, the final recommendation will be made to me, and I'll make a final decision on December and present it to you at the December 8th board meeting. The plans are kind of, there's a lot of obviously what happens frequently here in Olentangy is that rumors start flying around. No decisions have been made on redistricting, so I just want to reiterate that to anybody who is in the audience or paying attention to that online. And then to highlight 4 action items there, you see we have a memorandum of understanding. Our clinic aides with OPSI 222, our clinic aides are joining the intervention aides OPSI 222. I'm sorry, AFL-CIO Local 222, I said that wrong. And we have the network equipment for Berlin Middle School, which is a great sign that is progressing. I have a few trucks for our maintenance and transportation departments. And then my least favorite agenda item of every year, and that is the approval to purchase road salt, because it is the clear indication that winter is heading right around the corner. Mr. Meyer and that weather team, they're poised. Look at it, the three of the weather team members right down there poised to start making their weather runs. And then here's our list of important dates. I, again, highlighted our redistricting. We have a classified interview date coming up, so anybody looking to employment opportunity with our district, encourage you to attend the classified interview day. And then our next board meeting, Tuesday, November 15th. I appreciate you accommodating my request to move that meeting to Tuesday so I can go watch my daughter graduate from Army Flight School.
And we still need to work on December, so we may have a change to December as well. So
Gotcha.
Keep that.
No
on the
worries.
agenda. So, in the vein of living the mission, so last Saturday, at the districts, the cross-country districts at Hilliard, Governor DeWine was there, and the girls' team had an opportunity to spend some time with Governor DeWine and have their picture taken with him
Oh, nice.
during the cross-country meeting. So that was
Beautiful. Did they ask him for more school funding?
interesting. I think they did. At
Good
least-
job, good job.
At least my daughter did. Any questions for Mr. Rafe?
I just want to add one, that State of the Central Ohio Workforce event was great, and it was really a wonderful opportunity to see, and it highlighted the work that Bridge Ed program is going to do. When we hear from all these hiring managers who are talking about, just the influx of people that are coming to the Columbus area, they're predicting another million or so folks over the next 25 years, and how that's going to impact jobs, how it's going to impact the workforce, and really the level of intentionality that's going into working with schools so that we can tailor, the education to meet what the market needs. So I found it just to be fascinating, and it just highlighted the importance of us as a school district working with those folks to make sure that our students are well positioned for success moving forward. So I thought it was a great event. I encourage everyone to keep an eye out for those sorts of events moving forward.
Thank you. We're really proud of that. And Krista and Todd have taken the lead on running with that, and it'll continue to grow and transition. We're looking at what the next 12 to 18 months look like, and adding more businesses, more opportunities, kind of diversify that base of the businesses organizations that we have partnered with. But when you talk about the chief talent officer for Wexner Medical Center sitting on a stage at Berlin High School talking about engaging with our students, or the chief talent officer at Worthington Industries and Chase, and those Honda and Elford Construction, and I really think it's going to be a great opportunity for our students. And everybody recognizes there's an arms race for talent, and we're graduating nearly 2,000, again, is a big district, nearly 2,000 kids every single year here. Now, not quite at 2,000, but we're going to be there real soon. And they are, as you saw tonight, really talented. So, very proud of that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rafe. Mr. Jenkins, the treasurer's report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Just a few items tonight, and then I'll get into, if it pleases the board, I'm assuming you would like me to do the 5-year forecast presentation.
Yes.
That sounds like a good idea, but just a couple other items I want to call your attention to. Donations on this board report. Thank you very much to the McCabe Grunkmeyer family. $2,610 that were donated to the Shanahan Athletic Department for cross-country uniforms. Let me go backwards here now. The September 22 monthly financials, I realize I set you all up for failure. I didn't put that bullet point in the presentation, but I promise you they're there. If there are any questions about the financials, standard fare, your normal presentation style. If there's anything about it that you have, I'm open for any of those discussions or questions right now. Okie dokie. So the next item up for bid would be and by the way, yep, thank you. I was going to say I'm on that slide. The appropriations, so the formal appropriations that set our budget, obviously with the county auditor, again, kind of standard and normal procedure there. If we have any questions about those.
I do not. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay. And then finally, the last item that you see is the fun item, the 5-year forecast presentation. So I'm ready to roll. Actually, would you like me to discuss some of the upcoming things or do the forecast first?
Your choice if you'd like to, but I like the fact that we're at least seeing ahead of time what's coming up, and we can be prepared for those dialogues, and be particularly interested in the 457 discussion, but we can wait until you're ready.
Okay, all right, that's just fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into the 5-year if
Okay.
we're ready then.
We're not,
Well, I think-
Or
well,
I guess
first-
we should do the, you want to do the public participation first?
Yeah.
Okay,
Just
got it.
first. Yep. Any questions for Mr. Jenkins on our treasurer's report? Okay, so let's go with public participation.
We have Danielle Hayden, 5963 Gainey Court in Westerville, and would like to discuss too large of a district, or I'm assuming this is, or problems with leadership in charge.
Thank you. Perhaps you've thought Olentangy is too large of a district and that maybe it needs to be divided. But maybe we need to look at who's in charge. Let's look at examples of principals in charge. When I alerted a principal that a special needs teacher was not handling situations well, the principal, Ms. Seitz, who was absent both times I came forward as an aide, never questioned me. Thankfully, another aide came forward 2 years later, and the SLC teacher is no longer at Olentangy and is on the disciplinary search on ODE. Mrs. Baker, principal at Berkshire, diverted from facts and findings by not completing what turned out to be multiple teacher evaluations. You see, Mrs. Plako, 8th grade Algebra 1 teacher at the time, did not enter test grades before quarter end because grades were low. Mr. Wright, assistant to our superintendent, said he would stay on top of the situation. Tell me what I want to hear and then look the other way, because this administration had no idea that the teacher evaluations weren't completed and went 2 evaluation cycles before I noticed the error. Mrs. Plako didn't have a written evaluation in 4 years. Mr. Rafe, you wrote in Mr. Wright's evaluation, and I quote, "He performs in an exemplary manner, fulfilling all of his duties as Chief of Administrative Services." Well, that was a lie. Under Policy Manual 1000, I quote, "The proper performance of school business is dependent upon maintenance of unquestionably high standards of honesty, integrity, impartiality, and professional conduct." And it goes on to state, "Responsibility shall flow directly from the superintendent through administrative staff." There was no plan to make sure evaluations were completed and documented until I alerted you of the problem. Now, you can hope for the best that required evaluations are completed, but without a plan, that hope is futile. Mr. O'Brien, who was president at the time and is president now, stated, and I quote, "While you may have a different opinion of Mrs. Baker, I had 2 of my daughters attend Berkshire, and we, students and parents, had a great experience there." Mr. O'Brien, what about the kids you represent? Our neighborhood, kids next door. The latest evaluation states Mrs. Plako was intimidating, I quote, to her students. So I'm glad you and your daughters had a great experience, but are you going to discount what has been happening for years? You chose not to complete an evaluation of our superintendent, even though you were informed of the required evaluations not being completed. And for Mr. Rafe and Mrs. Baker to not allow a parent-teacher conference with Mrs. Plako is the reason I'm here. Administration needs to listen when problems arise and learn how to handle problems with personnel. I spoke August 25th and will continue to speak until this district requires annual teacher evaluations and superintendent evaluations. Your actions have not always aligned with board policies. We need honesty, integrity, transparency, and impartiality for all, not just the board members' families. Which leads me to ask, is this district too large, or is the problem with the administration in charge? Thank you.
I will I'll make a clarifying comment on the question about the district being too large. You know, we spend $12,000 per pupil here in Olentangy, and the benefits of scale can't be discounted. If you look at Upper Arlington, who's on the ballot this fall, they spend $17,000 per pupil. If you apply that $5,000 difference to us, you're talking over $100 million of scale and efficiency by being organized the way we're organized, and I stand by our leadership team. So with that, we will move to,
I'd like to make a clarifying comment, because when somebody tells me that I didn't listen or didn't, I met with Mrs. Hayden for an hour and a half about 8 years ago on the issue she's still complaining to us about 8 years later.
okay. All right, we'll go to our first discussion item. It's a second reading of the board policy updates. Dr. Jack Fetty.
Good evening. We have the second reading of the board policy update. Were there any questions on those policies before you vote later this evening?
Right, covered in the first reading? Okay.
Mr. Jenkins, would you like the clicker for your presentation down there, or are you coming up here?
I'll get it down here.
All right, we'll now go to the first reading of the 5-year forecast. Ryan Jenkins, our treasurer.
Where do I aim? Should pick it up anyway. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien, members of the Board of Education, community members, government team back there. This is the fun part. They're not even paying attention right now. So the 5-year forecast, what I've tried to do is, in many ways, distill the 5-year forecast in 5 seconds. So for those of you who would like a 30,000-foot view, the 5-year forecast can honestly be broken down into, I liken it sometimes when I talk to members of the community who ask me, it is literally like a checkbook. You have a beginning balance, you have revenues that come in each year, you have expenses, and so you take your beginning balance, you add your revenues, you subtract your expenses, and you end up with a closing balance. So our 5-year forecast in one neat, concise table is this first slide. And we can see that we begin fiscal year 23 with $156,805,599. And we are forecasting right now to end fiscal year 27 with $50,859,156. This first year, fiscal year 2023, we are forecasting about an $11.5 million budget surplus. We do begin to eat into or erode obviously the line of revenue surplus or deficit. And all of this right now would be projections without any sort of additional operating levies. So graphically, for those who are more pictorial, this is the same representation. The black vertical bars are the revenue and the gray are expenses, and then the resulting yellow line would be the effect on the cash balance. So if we want to take a look at how a lot of folks think of, what are your reserves, what are you carrying over? And this is one slide that might be, I'm not sure, it was a very last minute thing that I pulled on Amanda and Krista and her team, but this slide should be accurate with what you're seeing on the big screen. Right now, it should be showing, and I can't quite see because of the curtain, 54 days of cash carryover by the time we get to fiscal year 26-27. This is a obviously 2-for-1 graph. The left vertical axis is total days cash and goes with the bar graph. The right vertical axis is our daily spend. And so we're spending about $833,000 per day out of our general fund in the current school year, and that will grow to just a shade under $1.1 million by the time we get to the end of the forecast. So to go just a smidge deeper, but not so deep that people fall asleep, I want to take a look at key assumptions. We are a district that is driven almost entirely by our real estate revenue. So a very key assumption is to understand what we have forecasted for real estate values. We are about 84% res ag. Sorry if I shouldn't do that. I should say the full Class 1 residential agricultural. Homes, farms. We are 84% that type of property value, and about, obviously, the complement of that, 11% commercial industrial, and about 5% PUP. It's interesting to see that our valuation on residential agricultural is just for 2022, the tax duplicate's not finalized yet, but we're forecasting about $4.2 billion, and that's going to grow to about $5.4 billion by the time we get to the end of this forecast. So the resulting growth in our real estate revenue is that while we're expecting just a little bit under $211 million in real estate taxes, and this is combined, this is across all property types, commercial and residential, That will grow to just a little bit under $230 million by the time we get to 2027. Another major revenue stream is our public utility personal property. If you're thinking public utility, what are you thinking? Railroad tracks, gas pipelines, any public utility, AEP, Columbus Southern Power, that sort of thing. I think I just dated myself. Columbus Southern Power has been AEP for a long time. So 2023, a little under 19, or beg your pardon, a little under 20 million, and growing to about 23 million. Now we're going to get into the interesting part that Mr. Daberco had spoken earlier about our state formula funding. This is the same graph, it's just a slightly different lens. On the left, you see that the current state funding formula has our 22-23 school year base cost of just a little bit over $150 million. I think it's right around 152. On the left, it's by component: direct classroom instruction, leadership, administration, instruction, student support, and then district leadership and accountability. On the right, it is by what we know a school district is, which is a people business. So personnel versus non-personnel. The funding formula, as it is currently written, also looks at, and a major piece of it is what is, even though it's called the state funding formula, there is an implied, an understood local share. So our current uncapped local share, if the formula was doing what we wished it would do, which is fund us 100%, would be $1,495 per pupil from the state. Because of what we're going to talk about in just a second, I know there's probably a couple questions that are coming, the caps keep it at $960. The formula does not work 100% like it's supposed to. So the next slide shows that what we are going to get, though, certainly is better than where we were as recently as the 1920-2021 school year. We are forecasted, and there's a couple of little pieces that you see here. The orange bar is unrestricted funding, and the little sliver of green would be restricted funding, but the two together really make up your 5-year forecast, or beg your pardon, your state aid. If a couple of you go back and crunch a couple of numbers and you don't see this agreeing with what's on ODE's site, this also is including a little bit of casino funding. So this slide includes casino funding, which is receipted in a 31XX receipt code. Here is the slide, though, that really shows what could be. If our state funding formula worked at 100% of what it said we would get when you just simply crunch the numbers in the algorithm, we would be getting an additional $24.8 million, almost $24.9 million in state funding. So this graph is the complement to what you saw just a minute ago. And so ultimately, if you take the $24.8 million and you add it to the roughly $24 million that's on this screen, if the formula did what it was supposed to, our state funding would be closer to $48 to $50 million. Right now, the state funding formula only allows us to get a third of additional funding that we would otherwise be entitled to if the formula worked 100%. That's why Mr. Daberco mentioning, Mr. O'Brien mentioning, that it is imperative, it is important for our community to understand how critical the Fair School Funding Plan would be, especially if it was fully funded. Certainly, we don't want to see the current 33%. We're at least allowed to get a third of the additional funding each year. The next slide is going to show then your last major revenue source, which is other major revenues. One of the chiefest pieces of funding in this particular revenue stream is our TIFs. I came from a district where I understand that some folks, and in some cases understandably so, believe that those are corporate welfare or giving money away. But most of the TIFs and most of the economic development incentives that we have as a district are reasonably what I would call non-school, meaning we've done everything we possibly can to make sure that we get what we would otherwise get regardless of the TIF, and/or we have economic incentive or development payments that try to hold us harmless. But that particular revenue stream can be as much as $43 million by the time we get to 2027. So now, any particular forecast would not be whole if you didn't just not look at revenues, but also look at expenses. For lack of a better word, I think everybody here knows we are driven almost entirely by increased staffing because of increased growth. So this particular slide is going to show our anticipated growth across certified staff, classified staff, administrator staff, and our resulting pupil-teacher ratios. We also have, and I want to call your attention to the enrollment you see here would be head count enrollment. That's taken from a one-time snapshot in October. In a minute, you're going to see a different kind of funding, that is our funded enrollment, and I'll explain why the two bases are slightly different of how those are tabulated. So on the next slide, we can see, again, our major expense areas that we have incorporated into this forecast. Middle school 6, which should be open by 23-24, elementary 17, which will be open, certainly we hope, by 24-25, and elementary school 18, which would be 26-27. So this is kind of the impact on the staffing. If one wanted to know, well, if you hire 33 and a half new teachers in FY23, what impacts does that have on the forecast? And that's what this particular slide will show. Again, we grow our expense almost tied directly to our increase in student enrollment. There are also some other major things that impact expenses, and these would be what causes wage inflation. Certainly, we have base wage increases that match negotiated agreements through the 24-25 school year at 3%. From that point forward, we are forecasting 2% for the 25-26, 26-27 school year. Along with, though, wage inflation or the entire shift of an entire salary agreement, we also have steps for additional education as teachers go from master's to master's 15, master's plus 30, as we have increase in experience levels. Most people call them steps. And so the assumption on the certified side is 2.7%, on the classified side 2.9%. There was not a mistake. The administration is not there because the administration has salary bands from low to high. The administrative salary increases, therefore, are just simply forecasted at a gross move. There's not a piece of steps plus a piece of salary wage inflation. It's 4.5%, which was fiscal year 23, and then 24 through 25, which matches other employees, and then 2%. But the way to look at a stepping teacher or a stepping classified individual would get both pieces, certainly your negotiated agreement plus your experience level increase. If you put all that together, we're currently expecting wages somewhere in the neighborhood of about 185, 186 million, and that will grow to a little under 245 million by the 26-27 school year. Any good employer is going to have good, robust benefit plans, and we can see here that we're expecting just a shade under 69 million for the 22-23 school year, and then growing to about 93 million by the time we get to the 26-27 school year. So kind of some things that will be the most telling about whether in 5 years I get an A or I get some other grade are what we call the risk analysis. I think you guys are used to that term. What will be most crucial on the, and I think I just cheated everybody in the audience. I did not move to that slide. I apologize. General property taxes, we must take care to monitor valuation. We have to be careful, especially in light of current housing market trends. We know that the Fed is probably poised to raise at least by 75 basis points. That's 0.75% in both potentially November and December. So we'll have to monitor what happens in our district. Good news about our district is we're a little more, when it comes to the real estate market, we're a little more recession-proof than a lot of other districts, and we recover faster from whatever occurs. House Bill 126 factors also have to be taken into account. That was a severe restriction on Board of Revision activity that the Board of Education would be involved in. On the unrestricted grants and aid, pretty well stated the way it was earlier. It is crucial that the fair school funding formula at least continue at current cap levels. We've got to be able to get growth. It would be wonderful if they would take it to the full 100%. That would be a really impactful development for the district. Same kind of risk analysis factors on the expense side. Same kind of concept. Growth, growth, growth. There's no other way to put it. Knowing that we're opening middle school 6, planning for and fully expecting elementary 17 and 18 are going to drive our salary and benefit increases. We must continue to monitor our future trends to keep up with growth. And obviously the previously noted wage increases are critical because we will be negotiating again, I believe, what would be the spring of 26. That's if I did my math right in my head. Some other info we would have used, sometimes we get this question, would you use your RS stimulus funding for? What did you do with your ESSER funds? And so in full disclosure, we would have spent the vast majority of our ESSER stimulus funds last year. And this was exactly how we kind of divvied it up. And I hope that wasn't, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, that was the longest presentation you've ever seen because of all the charts I had. But any questions you may have, let me know.
Well, I'll just start with really not a question but a comment. So I think for someone who's been here maybe a month, done a great job articulating the 5-year forecast. So thank you for that. So any questions for Mr. Jenkins?
I'll go last.
Let's go this way.
Always bears questions first.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Devico.
So, some of these are so obvious, but I'm asking him to make a huge point to folks that would happen to stumble across this video and understand the finances of our district. If the state does not fulfill its obligation to fully fund our school according to the formula they made, who pays the difference?
Our local community.
So our taxpayers, yeah, okay. How does the $900 in pizza money, the $900 in change that we're getting from the state compare to what a private, non-public school that's not required to take every student, that's not required to educate students with disabilities, how does that compare to what they're getting?
So there's two major pieces of funding that I researched, and it's hard to definitively say you can add the two numbers together, but when I tell them what they are, it'll still be very telling. And the reason you can't add them together is because there's surely some students who get auxiliary funding who are in the other pool who get scholarships. But in the most recently completed fiscal year where I could get both pieces of data, fiscal year 2021, the state is sending about $927 per pupil to chartered non-public schools, private schools, for auxiliary funding. And then there was, I want to say, 61 or 62,000 students in that same fiscal year. Sorry if I keep saying fiscal year, 21-22 school year, who got on average, I want to say, $6,500 per pupil of Ed Choice. John Peterson, there are autism scholarships, there are also expanded Ed Choice and Cleveland scholarships. So those two numbers can't just be neatly and concisely added together until you figure out who's in both. A student in both would obviously double count, but that gives some perspective to the types of dollars that go to chartered non-pubs, and we get $960.
So just kind of the homework on that, that number we get from the state has decreased in real dollars in the last 20 years, and the commitment to non-public schools has, by my numbers, which are probably not as good as yours, at least 2.5 times more. So two more questions.
Sure.
How sensitive is our debt? You talked about the revenue, property tax sensitivity to economic conditions. How sensitive is our debt, which I know is not part of this forecast, but is it, and Mr. O'Brien, you know this probably more than I do. How sensitive is that to economic conditions? Is that going to impact our debt, or are we set with what we're paying and it doesn't matter how far they raise rates up?
It does not matter how far they raise rates up on existing debt. That debt has been sold. We know what our coupon payments are for our investors, but it does have an impact because if we're truly planning, which we are, our elementary schools 17, 18, 19, if we're planning middle schools 7 and potentially, it's just not in this 5-year forecast, but by the time you get to 28, 29, potentially middle school 8, our borrowing costs will increase. Now the flip side of that is you will see, and I can already promise you, you're going to see a slight adjustment when I have you adopt this a month from now. And the reason being, Missy and I, Ms. Griffith and I met with Red Tree Investment today and had one of those moments where I just rattled off how the Fed's raising interest rates and hadn't stopped to think about how we've gotten so used to an interest rate environment on our general fund investments where we've gotten nothing. And the forecast will probably be at least $5 to $6 million better by the time I go into November, because we had a moment of, oh yeah, we probably need to calculate in the fact that our general fund investments, we have around $146 million of general fund money invested, and we're going to dramatically increase what we expect to get in interest. And it'll be a game changer across 5 years. It can actually move it.
I guess the question for Red Tree is how quickly can they reposition those assets, right? Because they're fully vested today, they're not sitting in cash, so you're going to have like a transitionary time where you're kind of trading out of spots into new stuff. But yeah, it's definitely encouraging to see that.
Yeah, they felt like
the good side, the potentially good side
that's right.
of a rising interest rate environment.
Now, the added interest income never offsets the added borrowing costs. You always, you'd always would rather have the lower borrowing costs, and we just have had astronomically low borrowing costs for the last 5 to 6 years. So the upshot, Dr. Daberco, to your question is, borrowing costs over time will be more expensive, offset by the fact that we will make a little more too on the general fund side. But existing debt can't just drift upwards. It's locked in.
So we're not rushing off the I bonds tonight before the deadline.
Yeah. Well, and it is important to note that Ohio Revised Code is fairly strict on what we can and can't do.
Right.
Yep.
Right, and it kind of limits your ability to get aggressive in the interest rate environment.
So the last question I would ask is, and it could be to Mr. Rafe or to you, Mr. Jenkins, how would $25 million, not just a one-time infusion, but every year, how would that impact our potential 5-year forecast in 2027 when it's in 26, and how would it impact that as far as a levy consideration? And Mr. Rafe, would $25 million be able to be used at all in the district for educational things?
Well, I'm really proud of the organizational structure we've built over the last 8 years and what we have in place and moving forward with a healthy forecast. Essentially, an infusion of $25 million, if you go back to what the overall valuation was of roughly 5.3, 5.5, up to $6 billion, a mill raises $5 million to $6 million. So that's the equivalent of not having to pass an additional 5 to 6 mills. So, in our last 2 levy asks were 6.4 and 6.9 for operating. But at 500 students per year, at $12,000 per pupil, that's $6 million, which is just over a mill. So, we still need an additional mill-ish for new growth and, just for inflation, but it would the days of those 7 mill operating levies would be over. And I'm sure I think I heard there was 9 people watching the presentation tonight. I'm sure one of them is Julie Fiesel, who would say, in 2000 and whatever, we passed a 10.5 mill levy. So, that would certainly be welcome relief for our residents.
And I think that's important to note that if we were fully funded by the state, I don't think it would necessarily change, say, the product we offer, right? It would really be more about not, kind of breaking the levy cycle,
Correct.
right? Versus just, the temptation would be to spending spree, and that's not what we want.
No.
We want to remain disciplined, remain focused, and really just use those additional funds to give the taxpayer some relief.
We would make
Absolutely.
sure we had a flag up on stage,
I'll fund that.
You know, the question though, I mean, is when we talk about days of cash that we have, you can make decisions about math coaches, right? And the needs that present themselves, and you don't have to think about austerity measures. You know, you can, math coaches make an impact on kids, as we, met with our fifth graders, teaching team a week or two ago. Those kind of things cost money, and it's $25 million, yes, extend the levy, yes, all those things, but there might also be something that the superintendent recommends, and we don't have to worry that it's gonna cause
I
a
would view it
problem.
mathematically. All those are great points, but I've gone ahead and gone back to the 5-year and 3 seconds. For all but the last 2 fiscal years, the extra shot of state funding would completely change the calculus on whether we have surpluses or deficits. So while you can't completely take an operating, when we grow the way we grow, you certainly can't ever say, hey, okay, no more operating levies. It would dramatically change what we see here if it was 100% funded. And not to be, a pessimist, but I do know that it will be work, and that's why it's important for our community to, as much as possible, keep it as something that they're, thinking about, discussing. It would really impact the district tremendously if that were to occur.
And
But-
impact them as well.
Absolutely, yeah, I guess that's a great point. And those deliberations, our governor leads with a budget, usually into January, 1st of February, and it becomes a House bill, and then all of those deliberations go back and forth until a budget is passed in June. So it's coming up fast.
All right, very good. Good dialogue. All right, we can now transition to the action items. I'll start with presenting the board action item, which is to approve the board policy updates outlined in Exhibit A. I believe that was like the first 100 pages of the 160-page pre-read. Could I have a motion, please, to approve board action item A?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Lester and then Dr. Wise for the second. Any discussion items on the board action item? Any discussion on board action? Seeing none, please call the roll. Mr. Jenkins?
Dr. Wallach,
Yes.
Dr. Wise,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Dr. Dabrico,
Yes.
Mr. Lester.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Jenkins, would you please present the treasurer action items?
Yes, let me go backwards here on mine. So you have in front of you, and I see I got my bullet points out of order, I apologize. But in order that they're presented to you in your agenda, we've got, I can't get back to the right slide, I apologize, I'll go here. You've got the donations as noted. You've got the appropriation measure. Do you guys take these one at a time, or do you want one
can do them
vote
all
for all?
together. Yep.
One vote for all, okay.
Do A through D?
Yep. So A through D, if there's any questions on those items?
Okay, could I have a motion to approve the treasurer action items A through D, please?
So moved.
Have a second? Any discussion on the treasurer action item?
Who was my second? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Who did the second?
Who was the, did I, who got
Dr.
so?
Wallach, you just did the second.
Okay.
Any discussion? All right, please call the roll.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Dr. Dabrico,
Yes.
Mr. Lester,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach, Dr. Wallach, Mrs. Patrick was on here. There was a typo.
Yes,
Sorry, Dr. Wallach.
all good.
Dr. Wise,
Yes.
are there any questions about some of the foreshadowing items? Okay.
All right, Mr. Rafe, could you please present the superintendent action items, and could you please pull out action item A6 separately?
Yes, sir. I'd like to start by presenting Superintendent Action Item A6 for approval.
Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion on action item, superintendent action item A6? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Dr. Dabrico,
Yes.
Mr. Lester,
Yes.
Dr. Wallach,
Yes.
Dr. Wise,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
No. All right, could you,
Yes.
Mr. Rafe, please present the remaining items?
Yes, sir. I'll present Superintendent Action Items A through G, excluding A6.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion on the remaining superintendent action items? Seeing none, please call the roll. Mr. Jenkins?
Dr. Dabrico,
Yes.
Mr. Lester,
Yes.
Dr. Wallach,
Yes.
Dr. Wise,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes. All right, I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn. Have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mr. Lester, have a second? Dr. Dabrico? Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Lester,
Yes.
Dr. Wallach,
Yes.
Dr. Wise,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Dr. Dabrico.
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. See you on November 15th.